What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 117. My name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode where sometimes I go solo or have other friends join me to talk about new movies that we get to check out in theaters or streaming. We break them down, we talk about what we liked or we didn't like, and then we'll even offer a recommendation. Should you go check this out in theaters? Should you skip it? Should you wait for streaming? And then at the end, the final segment, is this movie timeless? Can I see myself rewatching this movie in the future, various different times? Before we jump into episode 117, though, I did want to call out episode 116 is available on all platforms on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Go to those platforms wherever you listen. Give us a follow, subscribe, give us some likes. Let's interact. Let's talk about different movies that are going to be coming out in 2025. Speaking of a new movie, episode 116 is about Mickey 17. I give you my breakdowns of what I really enjoyed about that film. Just calling it out right now, little tease, Robert Pattinson's performance is probably one of my favorites of the year so far. Yes, we're only in March, but still, go to the comments. Let me know what you thought about Mickey 17 wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, let's go ahead and dive into episode 117, in which we are talking about Steven Soderbergh's newest film, Black Bag. Now, I have said this various times. If you guys have been listening for long enough, you know that I am a broken record, and there's a couple of genres of movies that I really enjoy watching, and they're always things that just catch my attention. Number one, superhero movies. Second is going to be action, and then eventually we kind of lean into a lot of the murder mysteries, and the fourth is going to be spy movies, espionage, thrillers, those types of movies where something is going on, you as an audience member, you're trying to figure it out, and that's exactly what Black Bag is. I saw the trailer for it a couple of months ago, and first of all, it's got a star-studded cast. You have Michael Fassbender, Cate Blanchett, you have Pierce Brosnan, rege-jean, all of these different types of actors, and then you put them in a specific situation where they're all spies and they're trying to figure out who is the traitor. So just by that premise alone, I am all in. So let me go ahead. That's enough rambling for now, but let's dive into some non-spoiler thoughts now that I've checked it out over this past weekend. I got to check out Black Bag this past Saturday, and I have got to say that this movie just completely hooked me right from the first scene that it started with. I mean, it starts with a nice one shot, but I was completely hooked. There was just so many things to keep my attention. Now, one thing I do want to call out is when I do watch these kind of spy genre movies, like spy thrillers, a lot of them, they grab your attention with a nice concept or premise at the beginning, but eventually they all kind of fizzle out towards the end. And that's sometimes like the good thing and the bad thing of some of these spy thrillers, but not Black Bag. The entire story throughout just had me just completely engaged. I wanted to know more. I wanted to figure out who was the liar. What specific words or what are their body languages? Like what are these characters doing in order to try to fool the other spies as well? So there was always something very captivating about what was going on. And I think what makes this film, Black Bag, so impressive is it's one of the rare spy films that has very little action. When I think about these kind of espionage or spy movies, you think about obviously James Bond, you think about Mission Impossible, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and all of them include some aspect of action and something to kind of get people that are really curious about either hand-to-hand combat or, a lot of gun and violence. They use that to keep people's attention. This film rarely has any of that. It's all dialogue, but it's great dialogue. It's great performances, and it just keeps you on the edge of your seat as you're trying to figure out, well, what the heck is going on? Who is the traitor? Now, speaking of traitor, let me give you a quick setup for the Black Bag in case you have not seen any trailers and you're just really wondering what the heck is this film about. So this film basically starts us off with the character of George, played by Michael Fassbender. He is a British intelligence officer, and he is basically trying to meet one of his acquaintances at a bar. Once he's able to meet his acquaintance, he is given a list of 5 different names, and those 5 names are considered potential traitors. Now, The reason that they're traitors is because there was a recent leak of a software named Severus. And basically, the plan was to leak this new software in order to give it to other parties that are not from the British intelligence and obviously either cause some type of war and cause some type of chaos. And so, in this case, George is now tasked with figuring out who is the traitor. Four of those names are individuals that he actually works with at the British intelligence office that he currently is residing at. And the fifth name is actually his wife, Catherine. And so now George is put in a specific situation where he now has to not only interrogate some of his friends, but then also interrogate his wife to see if she is the traitor who now has her hands on this software and is about to give it to the enemies. I'll leave it at that. That is a amazing setup. And again, some spy thrillers have some cool concepts, but I'm telling you, overall, the story was really, really cool. It is very straightforward. It's not flashy. Again, it's not trying to show off some cool action sequences. It's literally just dialogue, characters talking to each other, but there's still a lot of cool interactions that you need to really pay attention to in order to try to see if you can pinpoint, as an audience member, can I pinpoint who the actual liar is? So I was loving every second of it. As you can probably tell with my excitement about talking about Black Bag, it's going to be a definite recommend for me. Make sure if you guys have a theater near you and it's showing Black Bag, you guys go ahead and check it out and let me know if you agree with my excitement and if you agree that the film, without even action in it, it can still be very intense and exciting. So go ahead and check it out. That's going to be my recommendation. But now we've gone through the non-spoiler thoughts. Now let's go ahead and dive in and dissect this film a little bit more. So again, if you have not seen Black Bag, this is your chance. Go ahead and jump out of the video, watch the movie, then come back. That way we can interact in the comments or wherever you're listening and talk even more about Black Bag. Okay, hopefully that gives you enough time. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Pro number one for me around Black Bag is going to be the way that they set up different interactions with George and the other coworkers that he had. And what I mean by that is because George is an intelligence officer, and really all of his friends are as well, they all have different roles within the British intelligence office. But George specifically is dedicated to figuring out liars, figuring out different tics and reactions, and trying to run through different polygraph tests in order to figure out who's telling the truth and who's lying. And so he goes through that in different situations with his coworkers. But what I loved about it is that even normal conversations, for example, sometimes he was talking to his coworkers at a dinner party and he would set up these games where he's just trying to see what these characters are going to react with, what tics they might have on their face as they're talking. And he's really trying to pinpoint, are they telling the truth? Are they making up an entire story to try to lie to me in some capacity? But what was so cool is that it happens not only in the office that they work with, but it happens everywhere. Like I mentioned, dinner parties, a movie theater. It even happens in his own bedroom with his wife, Catherine. He's just trying to get reactions and he'll set up things. He'll put things like in people's purses or he'll try to say certain things in order to, again, set the individual up in order to figure out, is that true? Is that a lie? What's going to happen? And again, it's just fascinating to really have that tense feeling because you as an audience member, you're also trying to figure it out as you're watching it. Okay, you have 6 individuals. One of them is George. Which one of these 5 individuals around him is the liar? Who's trying to leak this new software called Severus? And so as you're kind of seeing these interactions, you're trying to get a feel for every character, how they act. Everybody's so different. Some are therapists. Some are just chronically liars. And so it's very interesting how just with straight dialogue and interactions between George and other characters, it's able to just completely engulf you in this entire story where all you're doing is trying to figure out who is the liar. I freaking loved it. So any interaction with George and some of the other characters was a highlight for me. Okay, moving on. Second pro for me of Black Bag is going to be the subversion. Now, every spy movie will have subversion in some type of way. And that's really the goal of it, right? With any espionage, it's trying to set you up with something and then it kind of flips it on its head. It bamboozles you in order to not have the audience really figure out the end or the climax before it actually finishes. And again, I've seen multiple spy movies, but I still enjoy that there's things that it's able to subvert me with. So again, big time spoiler coming up right now, but the big subversion of this film is obviously with the premise that Catherine is considered one of the traitors in this movie. You get the subversion that as the movie goes along, it makes you think, okay, is it Catherine? It is Catherine. Okay, it is. And then boom, towards the second act, now into the third act, you find out that Catherine is actually not involved. And the real subversion, the real setup is that they're actually trying to get both Catherine and George in trouble. They're basically trying to set both of them up with this whole Severus program that was set up. So that's really one of the subversions. But once again, I love how they were able to set it up, and it works. Even though I had a little bit of a feeling, okay, is it Catherine? It can't be this obvious. They set up different details throughout the movie where George is interrogating Catherine, and even he's unsure if she is actually involved in some capacity. So really love the way that they're able to kind of plant different seeds in order to give you the mystery and the feeling of you don't know who it's going to be. So you can't trust anybody. And you're almost in the position of George where he has nothing to base it off of other than the reactions of his coworkers and the things that they say in conversations and things of that nature. So really love that subversion. I also wanted to call out another subversion where you have a character named Clarissa. Clarissa is actually played by Marissa Abella, and she is a video surveillance individual that works at the British Intelligence Office. And she interacts with George and Catherine, and she ends up getting involved in this whole situation of a setup. But there's a specific part where she is such a good liar that she's able to actually pass polygraph tests. She's actually able to lie and get away with different types of situations, even against George, who is trained to find liars. And so again, the film, once again, planting seeds, making you think, okay, if it's not Catherine, is it Clarissa? She's skilled enough to be able to pass a polygraph test. It has to be her. How is she involved? And then at the end of the film, you find out she had no involvement. But so again, it's all those little pieces that kind of culminate with the film just trying to set you up with all these different types of prospects of individuals that could be responsible. And then it ends up being the person that you least thought of. So really enjoy the subversion. Again, even though I've seen multiple different spy movies and every subversion is a little bit different, the one that Black Bag presented was really fun for me. All right, third pro that I really enjoyed about Black Bag is the different camera setups or frames that they used during certain conversations. Not all of them happened with George, but in most cases, George was involved. And the camera sometimes in these scenes was set up almost like if it was like a surveillance video. It's capturing the people that are speaking, but it looks like every character is being watched. And so it gives this very awkward, but also like interrogating feeling where every side character is not really sure what they're being tested on. And this happens very well during the polygraph test scene between George and all of his fellow coworkers. It just keeps kind of cutting back and forth, and the camera just is at an angle. It just feels very awkward, and it's kind of, sometimes it zooms in on the character. Sometimes it might be James or Freddie or Clarissa or even Zoe, all these different types of side characters. And again, it just adds to the intense feeling that this film is giving off. And again, what's incredible is that these are just simple camera angles, just simple camera frames where they position it. They didn't need any action. They didn't need any kind of hand-to-hand combat or any guns. It really was just as simple as who is lying. And the way that they would set up the cameras gave the audience a little bit more evidence as to maybe is it this person or is it not? So again, really enjoyed how they were able to kind of utilize the different types of camera positionings in order to give off a very uneasy feeling and again, make you really pay attention to, well, who is the liar? So got to give a shout out to the cinematographer as well as the way that they positioned the camera in different scenes. All right, and then last pro, very quickly, I want to give a quick shout out to the music. I really enjoyed the way that the score was kind of played out. It to me, and I might be wrong. Again, I'm not an expert when it comes to music and anything in regards to sound at all. But just by the music and the score that played, and I listened to it afterwards on Spotify too after I watched the movie, I was just impressed that the film's music was kind of like a mix. It was almost like a mix of classic spy and espionage music, and then you would kind of hear modern take to it. So it's almost modern elements combined with classic espionage music, if that makes any sense. And it just melded so well that it was like upbeat but still intense. And it just added to certain scenes when George was walking through the office or when he was put in a specific position where now he's being set up and now he feels cornered and the music would just kick in. I just love how they was able to add a little bit more, a little extra to some of those scenes as well. So wanted to give a quick shout out to the music. All right, those are some of the pros that I wanted to call out in regards to Black Bag. Again, a lot of different stuff. I probably can come up with a couple more if I keep thinking about it. But to talk about a little bit of cons, I really don't have any. No notes for me. Again, I don't really have anything that either made me feel like I didn't enjoy it. Again, the payoff for me, I liked it. Now, is it one of the best payoffs that I've seen in any spy thriller movie? No, there's probably other ones that aren't not coming to me at the top of my head that I probably enjoyed more, but there wasn't really anything from the performances to the writing, the dialogue, and everything in between. It just worked. I really don't have anything that I want to call out to either nitpick or negatives that I could have thought about when watching Black Bag. So really quick cons. This gives us more opportunities to talk about things that we really liked. So let's go ahead and jump back into the positives and talk about our favorite performance. Now, at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about the slew of actors that were involved in this film. Like I mentioned, Cate Blanchett, Michael Fassbender. You also have rege-jean Page. You have all these different types of actors that are playing very unique characters and intelligence officers. But I got to call out one individual, and it's got to be Michael Fassbender. He just plays this character of almost like not a perfectionist, but more of like an individual that is very particular. He is analyzing you. He is studying you every time you have a conversation with him. And again, going back to my first pro about interactions with George, he plays George in a way where sometimes it doesn't even blink. He is just trying to study and download every single reaction that you do in a conversation. But what was also cool is when he was cornered, you could see him starting to kind of slightly crack and slightly break down. He would shake a little bit more. His mouth would be open, breathing through his mouth. And you could just see how he was going through a lot of different emotions as the story would play out. So again, everybody did really great when it comes to the different types of espionage and spy elements of Black Bag. But if there's one individual I wanted to call out, it's got to be Michael Fassbender as George. All right, moving on to favorite scene of Black Bag. I kind of spoiled it a little bit, but it's actually the scene when George starts performing a polygraph test on all of his fellow coworkers. He starts interviewing and getting to know Freddie, then he goes through to Clarissa, then Zoe, and then eventually to James, and he's basically interviewing every single one. But what was so cool about the scenes is that you don't see George at all. You're just seeing every one of these side characters. You're seeing them put in a position where now their every word is being further analyzed because now they're hooked up, their heartbeat is now being tracked, and now they're getting asked very personal questions. For example, Zoe, who is played by Naomi Harris, she is a therapist within the British Intelligence Office, and she starts getting questioned about her faith. Then you have Freddie, who's played by Tom Burke, and he gets questioned about affairs that he's had. And so you just start seeing these individuals get put in very particular situations, very personal and private. And it just feels very, vulnerable for all these characters. But it was so intense because, again, you as an audience member, well, at least me, I'm trying to pay attention to everything that they're saying and say, okay, who is the liar? Who's the traitor? I still don't know. So I really enjoyed that polygraph scene. And I really loved how they edited it too, because it would just cut from one character to another. Questions would be asked and it would just get cut, but it was all very smooth. And then last but not least, favorite shot of this movie. It's just going to be so random and so ridiculous, but my favorite scene actually happens in the first couple of minutes of this movie. It's at a point where George already has the names of the 5 individuals that he needs to interrogate, and he basically invites them all to a dinner party. And it's basically been the characters I've been naming throughout the podcast. He ends up inviting Clarissa, Freddie, James, and Zoe, and of course, George's wife, Catherine. And in this dinner party, again, he's kind of setting up dinner, and there's a point where he's cooking in the kitchen, he's got his glasses on, and then eventually all of the kind of smoke that's coming from his dish ends up kind of fogging his glasses, and it completely fogs up and makes his glasses white, yet he still keeps stirring. Something about that shot is just really incredible, and again, goes to show you how great of a performer that Michael Fassbender is. He just looks stoic. He's like, "Nope, nothing's gonna bother me from preparing this dish." So, it's super weird, has nothing to do with spies and espionage, but I just really love that frame. All right, everybody, those are all of my full spoiler thoughts about Black Bag. As you can tell, I really enjoyed this movie, but now here comes the hard part. Is Black Bag timeless? Can I see myself rewatching this movie in the future and continuing to enjoy it like I did the first time in theaters? Now, I've been thinking about this one, kind of ping-ponging it back and forth. I talked to my brother as well to kind of get some thoughts on like what he enjoyed or didn't enjoy about the movie. And I think I've ended on that Black Bag, for me personally, is a timeless movie. To me, it is very unique as a spy thriller. And what makes it fun is, again, there's not a lot of action. And so it really forces you to pay attention to the dialogue, pay attention to what characters are doing with their hands, with their face. And again, it just tries to really lean into the dialogue in order to try to capture, well, who is a really good liar? They're all intelligence officers, all these characters, but who's the better liar? And it's very well done within this film. And again, shout out to everybody that came out in this film and their performances. They all added to making this film just feels so cool and so engaging. But I also think that it's fun to rewatch this because now that you know the result, now that you know who is the traitor within this group of individuals, now it's actually fun to think about going back and watching it and trying to pick up, okay, can I see him lying or can I see her lying? And could I have noticed that the first time watching it? So I feel like when a movie is able to capture that kind of a feeling of like a mystery, but then because of what ends up happening in the climax, now it actually incentivizes you to go back and see, oh, okay, I missed this little detail. I didn't see him or her make that little tick when they were talking about this conversation. So again, that to me is what's crucial about some of these movies that you would want to rewatch. Is there something for you to still, obtain or learn about this movie after every single watch? So at least for me, in my opinion, I think Black Bag is a timeless movie. But guys, I want to hear from you. What did you think about Black Bag? Have you had a chance to check it out? If you have, let me know down below in the comments wherever you're listening. Either it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Whatever it is, leave a comment, subscribe. That way we can talk more about this movie and also discuss if you agree or disagree, whether it's timeless or not. All right, everybody. For those of you that stayed all the way through to listen to my full rambling thoughts about Black Bag, thank you so much. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 117 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode because the next episode is actually going to be about the new A24 film called Opus. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.